narrow lead over President Trump. Joining us now to discuss, Arizona Congresswoman Debbie Lesko. Congresswoman, great to see you today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, so I was reading some studies about Arizona. Cost there of living relatively low compared to some neighboring states like California. I know you get a lot of people moving there, but housing a concern for so many people right now. They say it takes a six-figure income to afford a house in Arizona these days. Talk to us about how Arizonans are feeling as they look to this election.
Well, I think the number one issue is the cost of living, not only in Arizona, but across the country. And I think Trump does a good job of explaining how under his administration, the cost of living was lower, inflation was lower, and under the Harris-Biden administration, it has risen so high. And that happens in Arizona, too. I mean, the cost of housing has gone up, mortgage interest rates have gone up, construction rates have gone up, groceries, gasoline, everything has gone up, and people are having a hard time just getting by.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that immigration is also high on people's list of issues they're concerned about. Could you address that? I mean, you're clearly a border state. I wanted to see how people are reacting to that.
Arizona has been the number one issue in Arizona for many years has been border security, and that's because we are directly affected. We have illegal immigrant children going into our schools. We have hospitals, especially the ones near the border, that are just being overloaded with illegal immigrants. And one of them in Yuma, Arizona, was going to go bankrupt because they just couldn't afford it. And the federal government under Biden and Harris is not helping at all. And when you have all these millions and millions of people that have crossed the border illegally under the Biden-Harris open border policies, things just get out of control. I mean, we have more crime. We have more housing has gone up because all these people are coming and there's a limited supply. And so there's more demand. The cost of education has gone up. Everything has gone up. And we have to figure out who is in our country. We're not vetting them properly. So as we saw in the House Judiciary Committee hearing this week, we had mothers talking about how the Biden-Harris open border policies were a direct result of how their children got raped and killed by illegal immigrants.
And Congresswoman, I love how you mentioned it is the Biden-Harris administration. As they so often called themselves over the last 3.5 years, you've seen Kamala Harris recently, of course, try to sound like she's now suddenly tough on the border after saying that we shouldn't call illegal aliens criminals, obviously being soft on allowing a lot of these people into this country and offering mass amnesty. Your thoughts as to, especially having a governor, Katie Hobbs, who's a Democrat and supports the Harris-Walz ticket, how locked in should Arizonans be right now in terms of paying attention to what's going on in this election and what these candidates are really supporting?
Well, I'm really supportive of the Trump campaign's commercials that point out, in Harris's own words, what she said in the past. She was against the border wall. She was for defunding ICE. When she was a prosecutor in California, she would not uphold the ICE detainers and let illegals out. She was for all kinds of things, and now all of a sudden she's magically changed. I don't think anybody believes that. I don't know how anybody can believe it. The other night on the debate, when the reporter asked her, well, how can you explain that you were against fracking, in her own words, and then she just claims, well, now I'm for it, I don't want to ban it. But she didn't explain how she got from there to here, and so many dramatic changes on her stances. I just don't think people believe her. I certainly don't believe her.
Let me ask you for a moment about the Senate race. It seems like Gallego in the most recent polls is ahead of Kari Lake, and to the point where it's beyond the differences between President Trump and Kamala Harris. In other words, he's leading in quite a few polls in Arizona, yet Kari Lake seems to be behind. Is there a reason you see for that discrepancy, and can that change in the coming weeks?
Well, I hope that Kari Lake can win the U.S. Senate seat, but as you said, the polling shows otherwise. I served with Ruben Gallego in the Arizona legislature and now in Congress, and he's extremely liberal. He's liberal on border policies. He's liberal on all kinds of things. He was part of the Progressive Caucus here in Congress, and now all of a sudden, magically, he's changed. The reason I think he's ahead in polling is because he has changed on commercials only, and so he has pivoted to the middle. He now claims he's for border security. He claims he's for these more conservative policies because he knows that he can't win by just appealing to Democrats. He needs Republicans and independents as well to win a statewide office in Arizona. And so he's being smart, and he's basically lying to the Arizona voters and saying he's in the middle when he's not. Now, Kari Lake is behind in fundraising, so she's unable to get her message out as often as Ruben has. Ruben's been on TV for quite some time now, portraying himself as this middle-of-the-road type guy to attract every voter in Arizona, and even though it's a lie, people will believe it.
Congresswoman, I'm curious to get your take on the media's role in this race. Obviously, reaction to the debate, at least among many conservatives, was that this was 3-on-1. President Trump fact-checked again and again, and a lot of softball questions, many said, toward Kamala Harris, not the fact-checks, not the corrections on certain statements she made that were incorrect. What's your take on their responsibility here, as there is a lot of misinformation out there as it relates to at least President Trump and his stance, and of course not fact-checking his opponent?
Well, for many, many years now, most of the media has leaned to the left, and basically they could be paid by the Democrat Party. You wouldn't even tell the difference if they were employees or not. And it's really a sad state of affairs. So when I meet with ASU students who are going into journalism, I encourage them to try to not be biased, to try to ask the questions and portray both sides. Obviously, that did not happen at the debate the other night. Those moderators were helping Kamala Harris. They were against President Trump. It was very obvious to me. And that happens, I mean, in Arizona, the main newspaper is the Arizona Republic. They've been liberal for years. My goodness, even if you just look at pictures, like let's say you see a picture of Ruben Gallego, he's smiling, a picture of Kari Lake, she's all disgruntled. I mean, they do it in all these different ways. And the other night, when President Trump talked about what was happening in Springfield, Ohio, I mean, all the media is saying this is false, 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 false. Some of the media says it's unverified, these claims from residents of Springfield, Ohio, that their pets are being eaten, which seems outrageous. But the people there in Springfield, Ohio, are going to city council meetings and saying this. There was a 911 call, and I think it's irresponsible for the media to just say it's false. This reminds me, I was on the impeachment defense team for President Trump, and I was on Judiciary Committee, and remember back then they were like, oh, all this stuff that President Trump is saying is false, 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 and the Steele dossier is all true. And, it's the same old game. They keep saying things are false when later they turn out to be true, but they never backtrack. They never apologize. They never change their way. It's always the same old thing.
Yeah, somehow they get away with it. And Congresswoman, just quickly, you mentioned meeting with college students. Obviously that's something, a segment of the population that is looking ahead and thinking about whether they can afford a home, what their economic future is going to be like after they get out of school. How does the Trump campaign reach these kids that, obviously the Harris Walls campaign is working with TikTok influencers and so forth to really get the young people. They've got Taylor Swift behind them. What can President Trump do and his team to reach these young people that are so influenced right now?
Well, I think President Trump is actually doing a really good job. I mean, I have kids that are in their 20s, 30-year-old, and they're supportive of President Trump. Also, we have the headquarters of Turning Point USA in Phoenix, Arizona, and they're doing a great job reaching out to college-age students and getting them all riled up and energized, I should say, for conservative causes. So we're doing really well in Arizona, and I think that young people, I've been really encouraged by all the young people I've seen that stand up for conservative values and see what Biden and Harris is dishing out is just wrong for our country and their future.
I'm glad to hear you're seeing the positive sides out there when you're visiting with these voters. Congresswoman Debbie Lesko, thanks for stopping by today. It's always great to see you.
Thank you for having me.